Picture a clear stream in the summer heat and a thirsty child kneeling to drink from it. That single sip could kill her within a day because for almost all of human history, the water that kept you alive was also one of the most dangerous things you could ever put in your body. We treat water as the safe choice, the thing you reach for when you want to be careful. But strip away the taps, the filters, and the chlorine, and water turns into a loaded gun. A single mouthful from the wrong puddle could carry cholera, which can wring the fluid out of a healthy adult so fast that a person laughing at breakfast is dead by nightfall. It could carry dysentery or typhoid, which climbs through the body over weeks of fever and delirium. According to the World Health Organization, contaminated drinking water still transmits cholera, dysentery, and typhoid, and is estimated to cause around 500,000 diarrheal deaths every single year, even now. So how did your ancestors survive, drinking from rivers and ponds for tens of thousands of years, with no idea any of these killers existed? The answer is one of the quietly brilliant stories in human history. For thousands of years, people did the right things to stay alive without ever understanding why they worked. They stumbled onto the truth, wrapped it in habit and ritual and superstition, and passed it down like a secret nobody could quite explain. Start with your oldest ancestors, the hunter-gatherers. They could not test water, but they could watch it. Over countless generations, they learned to trust their eyes and their noses. Moving water, fast and cold and tumbling over stones, was usually safer than a still pond wearing a green skin of scum. A bubbling spring straight out of the rock was better still. They did not know that stagnant water is a nursery for parasites and bacteria, or that a spring had been naturally filtered through layers of earth. They just knew the bad water smelled wrong, tasted wrong, and that people who drank it got sick. So they followed the clean living water, guided by memory passed across generations, an instinct for which water would feed you and which would betray you. It even shaped where humans chose to live. Look at almost any ancient settlement, any great civilization, and you find it clustered against a reliable source of fresh water, because water was the one thing you could not live 3 days without. Rivers like the Nile, the Tigris, the Euphrates, and the Indus did not just water the crops. They decided where humanity would gather, build, and grow. Then, humans discovered something close to magic. If you took your grain or your fruit and let it ferment, you got a drink that could keep you alive when the water around you could not. This is where beer and wine enter the story. And the truth is more surprising than the myth. You have probably heard that medieval people drank beer instead of water, because water was poison. Historians will tell you that is too simple. People absolutely did drink water, and they were picky about it. But there was a real hidden advantage inside a mug of weak beer. To brew beer, you boil the water. You have to. And boiling, though nobody knew this for thousands of years, is one of the most reliable ways ever discovered to kill the invisible things that make you sick. On top of that, the mild alcohol and acidity of the finished drink made it a hostile place for many pathogens. The boiling was accidental water purification. So a jug of what they called small beer, weak enough that workers and even children drank it through the day, carried far less risk than the stream it started as. People did not drink it because they understood germs. They had no idea germs existed. They drank it because it was food and energy, and it rarely made them sick. And that was enough to build a habit that lasted centuries. Now travel east, and you find a different version of the same accidental genius, built around fire and a single boiled leaf. Chinese tradition traces tea back to the legendary Emperor Shennong, who supposedly decreed that his people boil their water before drinking it. As the tale goes, a few leaves drifted down into his cup of boiled water, and tea was born. It is a myth, of course, but notice what is baked into it. The legend does not start with a leaf. It starts with the rule that water must be boiled. Whole civilizations turned boiling water into a daily ritual, disinfecting their drinking water every single day without a word of science to explain it. If your culture drinks hot tea from morning to night, your culture is quietly boiling the danger out of its water. But humans did not stop at watching, fermenting, and boiling. They started to engineer. In ancient India, Sanskrit medical writings including the famous Sushruta Samhita, laid out real instructions for purifying water. Boil it over a fire, heat it in the sun, dip hot iron into it, filter it through sand and gravel and charcoal, then store it in copper or ceramic vessels. Some of that advice is thousands of years old, and it is astonishingly close to what a modern filter does. Charcoal genuinely pulls impurities out of water, which is exactly why the filter in your fridge or your countertop pitcher is very often built around activated carbon to this day. These healers had reached the right answer thousands of years before anyone could explain the chemistry behind it. And then, there's the engineering that still leaves people speechless. Roman aqueducts carried fresh mountain water across entire landscapes, using nothing but the pull of gravity and a slope measured with breathtaking precision. Along the way, they built settling tanks, quiet basins, where the water slowed so grit and debris could sink to the bottom before it flowed onto the city's fountains and baths. Most Romans did not even drink straight from the aqueduct. They also dug wells and stored rainwater in cisterns, gathering and settling their water with care. The Romans could not see a single bacterium, but they understood in their bones that fresh flowing water from a clean source was worth building empires around, and they were willing to move mountains to get it. If you love this kind of stuff, subscribe, because I go deep on a new question about being human every single week. So here's the thing that should stop you cold. For all these clever tricks spread across thousands of years and dozens of civilizations, nobody actually knew why any of it worked. The prevailing belief for most of history was that disease came from bad air, foul smells, poisonous vapors, rising off swamps and filth. The real enemy, a living thing too small to see, swimming in a glass of clear water, was completely invisible to them. That finally changed on a London street in 1854. A doctor named John Snow was watching a savage cholera outbreak tear through the Soho neighborhood, killing hundreds in a matter of days. Everyone around him blamed the air. Snow did not buy it. He got a map, and he marked every death one by one, and a pattern rose up out of the ink. The deaths clustered like iron filings around a single public water pump on Broad Street. Snow argued the pump was the source, convinced officials to remove its handle, and the outbreak collapsed. Later, they discovered the well had been contaminated by leaking sewage. Snow could not see the germ either, but he had proven, with nothing but a map and relentless logic, that cholera rode in the water, not the air. It took decades more for germ theory to win. But that moment on Broad Street is the hinge, where humanity finally turned around and saw the killer it had been dodging, blindly and brilliantly, for 100,000 years. And that is what stays with me about this whole story. For nearly all of human history, your ancestors were solving a problem they could not even see. They favored the spring over the swamp, they boiled the leaf, they brewed the grain, they filtered through charcoal and carried water and copper, and they built aqueducts across the sky. They were right, again and again, and they had no idea why. Every safe sip was a small act of inherited wisdom, a habit polished smooth by everyone who drank the bad water and did not survive to pass on their luck. The next time you fill a glass from the tap without a second thought, remember that the plain, boring safety of that water is one of the rarest gifts in human history, and that it was paid for drop by people who were smart enough to live by answers they would never get to understand.